Today, my youngest, he turned 3 years old. I still can't believe that. His pregnancy from start until finish was the most complicated pregnancy and delivery I have ever had. So I'm gonna do kind of a story time. If you don't want to hear that, that's fine. Also, trigger warning, it gets, yeah. I found out I was pregnant with my son when my husband and I were arguing over something so trivial, and I was just like, I don't know why I'm this emotional. I had an IUD, so I figured, you know what? Whatever. I'm going to test, and I guarantee it's going to be negative, but it'll put my mind at ease. I had those cheap pregnancy tests from Amazon. I had like a box of them because I was terrified of getting pregnant on the IUD, and lo and behold, it happened. So I took a test. It was positive. I came into the living room bawling my eyes out because during this time, my husband and I were in marriage counseling. He was preparing to get out of the military. We were trying to transition everything. It was just not a good time for a pregnancy. I called the advice nurse line and I said, I'm pregnant and I have an IUD. What do I do? They told me to go to the emergency room to get checked out because honestly, I didn't know how far along I was or anything like that. I ended up going to the emergency room. The emergency room doctor told me that I was the first IUD fail that he had seen in his medical career, and he thought it was fascinating, but he could tell that I was also terrified at the time of being pregnant. He got me an ultrasound, HCG test, and said we're going to monitor it for like 2 to 3 weeks. And so I was told to go back because the risk of getting an ectopic pregnancy when you have an IUD is higher. So I ended up getting my HCG drawn like 3 separate times. And the first draw was great. The second draw was great. The third draw, my HCG levels actually dropped. And I was maybe measuring around 4 weeks. So I caught my pregnancy pretty early. Since my HCG did drop, they assumed that I was going to miscarry. So they set me up with one more blood draw. So I guess I had 4 HCG draws and an ultrasound to confirm that the pregnancy was no longer there or whatever. So while I was waiting for the HCG test to come back, I got an ultrasound done, and lo and behold, there was a little tiny baby that wasn't there. Well, the baby was there, but the heartbeat wasn't there, and the heartbeat was there this ultrasound, and the doctor still had no idea how my HCG dropped and then rose. And that is how I found out I was pregnant with him. They told me taking out my IUD gave me a 50-50 chance of him being here or not being here, but a 75% chance of him not being here if I would have kept my IUD in. During this time, while all of this was going on, my mom came to visit and I had to hide my pregnancy from her. We didn't announce the pregnancy until Christmas when we got all of my family together. We also told my husband's aunt and uncle about our pregnancy before we told anybody else. So it was pretty special. My sister-in-law, she said, I knew it when I gave all of my kids shirts saying big sister, bigger sister, and big brother. Yeah, so that was that pregnancy part when we announced it. And then after we announced it on Facebook, his mom, or my husband's mom, found out about it and she went absolutely insane. When we got pregnant with our first son, the reason why my husband went no contact with her was after she made a lot of threats to us. It's a long story. If you know my story, then you know, but if you don't, it's long. I ended up having one more appointment at the Naval Hospital I was being seen at before my husband got out, and I lost TRICARE, and then we had to wait for our new insurance to kick in. It was a whole hot mess. During that appointment, my last appointment at Naval, they almost kept me because my blood pressure was through the roof due to my mother-in-law making a lot of threats. It got bad. But then my mother-in-law, she apparently just dropped everything, and after she said some really mean things to my husband, she stopped contacting him, which was fantastic. We do have her number blocked, but there are ways to get somebody's to make a phone call to somebody if you have their number blocked. After that, the whole situation with his mom it was kind of a chill pregnancy for the most part. I passed my 3-hour gestational diabetes test by 1, so they told me to just keep monitoring. So I did that. My son was measuring like 2 to 3 weeks ahead at every appointment. They didn't seem concerned up until the last week when when one of the OBs that I saw, he was very confused as to why I wasn't induced yet, because my son was measuring at like 43, 44 weeks. And he was a big baby. He turned out to be 9 pounds, almost 10 pounds. So he was just like, all right, we're going to schedule your induction right away because you've got a big baby growing. Mind you, the OBGYN that I ended up going with, they were absolutely horrible and they were trash, and I hated them. I hated them so much. So I get to the hospital for my induction. My blood pressure is pretty spiked at this time, which I kind of saw coming because at the end of my last pregnancy is when I developed preeclampsia, and I was showing signs again of preeclampsia. So the OB that told me that he was inducing me tried to put me on medication that I wasn't allowed to be on due to the fact I had a prior C-section. My first pregnancy ended up with a C-section. It was scheduled, but when I got induced, I'm not supposed to have certain medications or it could cause more complications. After telling my OB, hey, I can't have this medication due to my prior C-section, the OB on duty was just all like, oh, well, yeah, you can't have it. So why is it in your... I was just, I don't know why it's in my paperwork. I don't know. I'm just telling you, I caught it before you guys did it. And she was just like, oh, thank you. They started me with Pitocin and a balloon Foley. Once everything started going, I was about 20 to 22 hours in when I asked for an epidural. Something happened with the epidural. I don't know. I do not know. I could feel pain, and then I was extremely nauseous. I passed out in my husband's arm when they put it in, and something didn't feel right. From there, everything it went so down so quick, and it was scary. Next thing I know, it is time to push, and every time I had a contraction, my son's heart rate would go down drastically, to the point where the OBs were getting pretty concerned. But then they had me get on all fours and shake my butt every time I had a contraction. And I don't know if you've ever had an epidural, but it is hard to move your legs. After pushing like 2 times, the 3rd time, it felt like I had a lightning bolt go across my face from here to here. And I blacked out. I threw up, and blood just started coming out of my nose, and it was in my mouth. It was bad. Like I said, trigger warning, my bad. It was then my OB said, nope, we're done. Call it. We are going and getting you an emergency C-section. And that's how I had my son. Due to the epidural not really working, they had to put me under. So my husband wasn't even able to be in the OR when our son was born. I just remember asking the nurses not to let me die. And then I got to meet my son an hour later. They ended up messing up my medication, and they put me on a routine for somebody that had a vaginal birth versus a C-section birth. So I was in a tremendous amount of pain until they fixed it. It was a horrible experience overall. And I'm sorry for this being so absolutely long, but that's my story.